Good morning, my name is Clint, and welcome to Faulty Eyes. Today we're going to be talking about Splatoon's multiplayer, and how it might be the best multiplayer I've played in years. Splatoon has always been on the peripheral to me. I owned a Wii U when the original came out, and let it slip. I owned Splatoon 2 and its expansions, and barely got past a few story missions. It's safe to say that at the time, I did not understand Splatoon. But man, has that changed. Multiplayer hasn't made up much of my gaming diet since Halo 3 matches and Gears of War, where I'd get into the action for a couple of months before dipping out. So multiplayer hasn't always been something that I've been particularly interested in, or good at. The multiplayer landscape since then has become an unrecognisable casino of experiences designed to suck your time, in exchange for small pops of dopamine, in the hope that you'll stay long enough to buy a few microtransactions before you bounce. Even the best games are burdened with some microtransaction chicanery. Every time I've attempted to get into a new multiplayer game, the time and the money required to keep up with it has sapped away any enjoyment I had. That and the overwhelming sense that a majority of modern multiplayer games are released unfinished, instead promising to update slowly in small chunks and hopefully culminate in a complete game. But that is not always the case. Think Halo Infinite's multiplayer and its inability to release anything substantial since its release, despite selling itself on the premise of being ever expanding. But Splatoon 3 is different, and here is why. For a start, let's look at the basics of Splatoon and how its simplicity slowly builds depth over time. At first glance, Splatoon 3 is one thing, one mode: turf battles. When you enter Splatsville for the first time, you're nudged towards the story campaign to the left, by the creepy dude popping out of the grate on the ground, and towards the multiplayer lobby, the home of Turf Wars, Splatoon's core mode. In Turf Wars, your goal is simple. Your goal is to splatter the most ground with your ink so that your team's colour is covering more surface area than the enemy team's. You don't even have to be that good at splatting the enemy. Your only goal is filling as much surface area with your own ink as possible. So even if you haven't mastered the controls, you can still add something to the match. Getting to the end of a Call of Duty match without killing someone is a failure, but in Splatoon, you've contributed by at least splattering a bit of ground for your team. If you're not good at taking out enemy inklings, that's okay, because one, if not all of the other players, will likely already be busy doing that. So just splat the ground and you're contributing. At the end of the match, you are rewarded for completing it with in-game currency to buy some sweet gear for your inkling from the daily rotating store, and some experience to level up and unlock more things. This simple gameplay loop is great. Play Turf Wars, get money, buy new gear, repeat. Then Splatoon opens up a little bit more as you explore the game's hub, Splatsville. You might find Salmon Run or Table Turf, completely different modes that suck you into a different gameplay loop with rewards that feed back into the main multiplayer experience. When you hit level 10 in Turf Wars, you unlock Anarchy Battles. This is where Splatoon's multiplayer kicks into high gear. At first I thought Anarchy Battles was just a ranked playlist of Turf Wars, but after diving in, I realized it was so much more than that. Anarchy Battles are a rotating list of objective-based gameplay modes. Because they only unlock at level 10, these modes, at least for now, are filled with players who know their way around Splatoon, leading to some extremely intense battles as you try to hold territory, ride a tower to the enemy's base, or fill their basket with clams. Suddenly, Splatoon 3 is a multitude of different modes to jump into and reap the rewards from. A typical Splatoon session is made up of a mix of all of these modes as you jump between them depending on how you feel at the time. Each mode feeling distinct from each other in a way that avoids any sense of fatigue. When you've had your fill of Turf Wars, just jump into Salmon Run. When you're feeling more competitive, jump into some Anarchy Battles. Other than the sheer variety in playstyles, there is one other thing that Splatoon does to keep each session fresh. That is, rotating map playlists. In Splatoon 3, the maps available to play on are set on a bi-hourly rotation, changing every 2 hours. In many multiplayer games, especially one that allows players to vote for their choice of map to play on, you find yourself match after match playing on the same battlefield, gradually chipping away at your love for Nuketown or Beaver Creek, or whatever map the community has decided they want to play on repeat. You barely ever see a new battlefield, causing the few maps that you're playing on to start to get stale. And when you do get a new playground to shoot your enemies, it can take a while to familiarize yourself with it. In Splatoon 3, you have 2 hours to refamiliarize yourself with each map presented to you, within that rotation. And right before you get sick of the maps you have available to you, they rotate to different ones. This prevents map fatigue in a way that I have not experienced in any other multiplayer game. When you're not feeling like PvP matches, there is Salmon Run, Splatoon's version of a Horde mode. And trust me, Horde modes haven't felt as good as this since Gears of War introduced them to the world. Salmon Run has you teaming up with 3 other Inklings to complete a shift of killing cute salmonids that seem oddly deserving of an inking to the face. This mode has you beating mini-boss like enemies, each with their own unique ways to murder you, while also having unique weaknesses to exploit so you can take them down quicker. This becomes particularly challenging as you start to come face to face with more than one mini-boss at once. It starts to feel a bit like Doom Eternal as you change your approach to taking down each one. There's nothing quite as intense as a battlefield filled with Splatoon 3's multitude of mini-bosses as they limit your ease of movement by inking the ground in their deadly green ink, sending a range of devastating projectiles at you, or attempting to smack you with a frying pan. Salmon Run can become quickly overwhelming and all the more satisfying for it when you survive a difficult run. The difficulty grows as you level up. You unlock rewards that give you XP boosts in single player, and a different piece of gear each month. You don't even have to master Salmon Run to get this new, unique piece of gear. You are rewarded with a re-roll of the gear's perks each time it comes up as a reward, so it is up to you when you feel like you have been rewarded the best version of that gear for you. When you are happy with your spoils, you can put Salmon Run aside until the next month's new reward releases. Although you likely won't because Salmon Run is just such a good time. Then there's Table Turf, a surprisingly fun card game that you can play with cards you have unlocked in other parts of the game. It's basically turn-based Tetris with the same goal as Turf Wars, ink more space than the enemy can. It's incredibly addictive and adds some weight to the rewards given to you in the other modes as you unlock the card packs in them. There are so many types of rewards in Splatoon 3 to unlock that you always feel like you're progressing with something. Then there's the campaign. At first it might feel like a bit of an afterthought, and I've even presented it a little bit like that by talking about it last. But follow that creepy old man into the grate and you're in for a good time. The first area is somewhat misleading, a very linear path with a few isolated missions that culminate in a pretty sweet boss fight. But after that the game opens up with a surprisingly interesting hub world to explore. It's collectibles, often unlocking packs of cards to use in turf battles, or items to decorate your locker. The missions are short, sweet, fun, and varied, and they are at times as good as any other platformer or third-person mascot shooter. All of these elements, rotating maps and modes, rotating items at the store, the campaign, have you coming back to the game in a much more organic, self-directed way. You're not coming back because you're afraid of missing out on some daily rewards, or for fear that you'll run out of time needed to complete a battle pass. You're coming back because you're just wanting more Splatoon. You're coming back because you're missing the sight of your colourful ink splattering on every surface like some sort of reverse power washer. You want to see if a mode or map you love is in rotation, to see if the store has something fresh to outfit your ink dude or dudette in, to unlock more cards for table turf battles, or something cool to just shove in your locker. The sheer variety on offer means that every session of Splatoon 3 really gets stale as you jump between Turf Wars, Anarchy Battles, and Salmon Run, knowing that the next time you pick up the game, you can rinse and repeat this gameplay loop with different maps and different modes. Not to mention that Splatoon is set to be loaded with free ongoing updates, adding new maps. These feel like added extras as the game already feels feature complete. Then there is Splatfest, an in-game event that pulls everyone in the Splatoon community in for a day or two of competitive splatting. A new mode is added just for Splatfest, and the community is split by picking an arbitrary side, paper, scissors or rock, gear, food or fun. Did I say arbitrary? Because I meant a deeply, philosophically important choice. This choice means everything to you, and you will fight for it, like you're on some sort of religious crusade. The right answer is gear, obviously. Feel free to come at me in the comments. One last thing, and perhaps the best thing about Splatoon 3, when compared with every other multiplayer video game on the market at the moment, is there are no predatory microtransactions. No battle passes, nothing forcing you to play for longer than you want, or more often than you would want. It's all just there in the game. The nearest that Splatoon gets to microtransactions is some gear locked behind Nintendo's Amiibo system, which might be okay if the figures were readily available, but they're not. Due to their limited run, they are sold at ridiculous markups by resellers and sell out pretty quickly when they come out. There is a relatively cheap option of buying someone's homemade NFC cards that act exactly the same as the amiibos themselves, but it's not quite the same as having the figures. As a wannabe completionist, the idea of having clothing I can't access without shelling out some cash, even if they're only aesthetic, is a little bit of a turn-off. But I'll be keeping an eye out on potential restocks of the figures, or get the off-market NFC cards so that I can appease that strange sense of completionism that's been baked into me through Pokemon's Gotta Catch 'Em All and the collectathons that I grew up with. But the main thing holding Splatoon back is its connection issues. It feels like I'm back in 2007, trying to find an online match of a game I'm a few years late to. There are times when I can't get a single complete match of Turf Wars in a play session. Either I can't get into one, or someone leaves after the game started, leaving me with no rewards for playing or any sense of completion. We live in an era where a game like Fortnite, almost half a decade past its release, can get you into a match with 100 players almost instantly at any second of the day. So Splatoon not being able to let me have a single game of Turf Wars in an hour is deeply frustrating. It says a lot about the quality of the game itself that I'm willing to put up with this. I'd rather play 4-1 against me than be booted from an entire match because a player on my team disconnected. At the very least, let me earn some money and experience from it. Salmon Run and Anarchy battles aren't nearly as affected by this, leading me to think that players might be deliberately rage-quitting matches, ruining the experience for everyone else in the more forgiving Turf Wars. Whatever it is, I hope it gets fixed, because it sucks being nearly completely locked out of one of Splatoon's core modes, if not the core mode. Hopefully they will find a way to mitigate this. With that large asterisk in mind, Splatoon 3 is one of the best multiplayer experiences I've played in a really long time, and it is one I hope to return to for a long time to come. I highly recommend Splatoon 3, bar its incredibly frustrating and frequent connection issues. I truly believe that if they manage to fix this, Splatoon 3 could be one of the best competitive multiplayer experiences out there at the moment, and an example of a microtransaction-less, battle pass-less, feature-complete experience that should be the bar for other titles to aim for moving forward. Anyway, thanks for listening, and I'll hopefully see you memeing on the streets of Splatsville sometime soon.